Another story that's running is this situation where thousands and thousands of migrants are moving towards the southern American border with the aim of getting into America. And the numbers have grown as this, quote, caravan has moved. And again, you can see the agenda. George Soros and his open society networks are absolutely at the center of the manipulation of the migrant crisis. Talked about that in detail in the last book, Everything You Need to Know But Have Never Been Told, and it's becoming more and more obvious. I'll come to another story in a second about that. And so the idea is to basically bring down the border between America and the South, and just have this a massive influx of people unchecked. And what you have again is the same situation where the Sorosization of the media, your MSNBC, your CNN, etc., are pushing the fact that these people are just poor and mothers with children. And that was what was pushed the great movement of migrants into Europe. But of course, that's not true. You wouldn't expect it to be true if MSNBC and CNN are telling you. What's come out from south of the border is that about 70% of this migrant caravan is young adult men. Now, interestingly, that's about the same as migrants coming into Europe in terms of the percentage of young adult men. This is not about protecting migrants and taking in refugees. It's not. I'm all for supporting genuine refugees. All for it. But that's not what's happening. But the word refugees is being used again and again, particularly in relation to Europe, to actually disguise young adult men pouring into Europe who are not refugees. And now we've got the story that Trump is going to have about 5,000 troops down there with this guy, Defense Secretary Mattis, to stop them coming into America. So that's a big confrontation that is on the way things are now. But that's what's happening. This is about using people to advance an agenda. And the migrants are just being used just like others are used for other agendas. And at the same time, you know, people sleeping rough in America has gone through the roof. People sleeping rough in Europe has gone through the roof. And we've had the story today, as I record this, record number of people sleeping rough in London. A record number of people are sleeping rough in London, with charities reporting a spike in street homelessness. Figures show 3,103 people were found sleeping rough in the capital between July and September 2018, the first time the total has exceeded 3,000 in a 3-month period. Charities attributed the surge to a lack of affordable housing. And what you have is this progressive mentality, which calls itself liberal, that's shouting on about homelessness and build more homes. There's not enough homes. There's not enough healthcare places. There's not enough jobs. While at the same time saying open the borders. And the common denominator between all those things and the incredible contradiction of open the borders is virtue signaling. Look how good I am. Look how nice I am. I'm a lovely person. I'm against homelessness, and I'm against people not having healthcare, and I'm against people not having jobs, and I'm against not letting people in untold numbers through the border. Look, I'm a nice person. So being a nice person, or being projected as one, is idiocy really, is more important and is the only criteria for what people say with this mentality. When actually, of course, opening the borders and wanting to end homelessness, wanting to sort out the healthcare crisis and have more jobs for people is completely contradictory. But it's not in the minds of these people, because they're only interested in virtue signaling. There's no substance, because that's been programmed out of them. Now, I'm coming to this other story. I just found it now, which came up in the last 24 hours, talking about this whole migrant crisis. Now, like I say, in the last book, I went into some detail about how Soros and these networks were fueling this migrant crisis with an agenda of transforming Europe and transforming the United States. All these attacks on white people and white men in this reverse racism that's going on, that's all part of this whole agenda. Anyway, this is the story that's come out. Leaked documents prove Soros's Open Society is working with UN in supporting current illegal migrant crisis. The United Nations admitted on Sunday that they are assisting the illegal immigrants in caravans from Central America making their way to the US southern border. The UN admitted in today's news article that they have mobilized extra staff and resources to assist the illegal immigrants in the caravans. UN News reported that they had mobilized extra staff and resources to help those making the journey in Mexico's southern borderlands, and ensuring migrants are informed on their rights to asylum. In an agenda video, the UN Protection Associate said many migrants were simply unaware asylum was an option. And a UN spokesperson, Adrian Edwards, told reporters in Geneva earlier this week that transit and destination countries must consider their human rights obligations ahead of immigration status. In other words, the agenda, and it is through the UN as well as Soros, although of course Soros is more powerful than the UN administration, that's for sure. They have this agenda of transforming American and European society, and the story goes on that in 2016, Breitbart.com obtained a leaked document from the Soros Open Society Foundation that reveals their close links to UN migration representative and former Goldman Sachs executive Peter Sutherland. Peter Sutherland is cabal to his DNA. He was appearing profusely in a book I wrote in the 1990s called And the Truth Shall Set You Free. Now he's overseeing the migration situation. I pointed all this out, and his part in it too in the latest book. So the leaked documents say that the George Soros Open Society claims that through Sutherland they are able to influence international migration policy due to the current migrant crisis. The leaked documents and today's UN report show that George Soros' Open Society is working behind the scenes with the United Nations to assist illegal migrants that, like the caravans marching to the southern US border. Breitbart.com reported George Soros' Open Society Foundation admits influence and incredibly close links with UN migration representative and former Goldman Sachs executive. Of course, he works at Goldman Sachs, he must care about humanity. In a leaked document, the paper, which told of the migrant crisis presented an opportunity for the foundation to extend its global influence and attract more money. And it mentions Sutherland's pro-migrant work. The foundation notes that through Sutherland, they have been able to advocate at an elite level behind the scenes. Open Society are one of the contributors to the Columbia Global Policy Initiative, which hosts Mr. Sutherland and claims that through Sutherland they were able to influence international migration policy due to the current migrant crisis. Excuse me. On the United Nations website, Sutherland is described as a strong advocate for promoting practical action to increase the benefits of migration. It's the agenda, mate, but they can't be honest about it, obviously. And not just because it would be exposed, but they literally can't be honest. It's in their genetics. And has routinely made comments against national borders and national sovereignty in Europe. Sutherland has even called for the European Union to undermine the homogeneity of member states. If you want the epitome of everything that's wrong with the world, then George Soros and this guy Sutherland are all you need, and certainly the starting point from where to begin to understand the mentality that is behind world events and dictating people's